So, Sev, you've been kind of busy with holiday stuff and that kind of thing, so we haven't really been recording.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Me, I myself, I've gotten into self-flagellation.
You've been flogging yourself?
No, no, no. I just play this game called Marauders, and it kind of just, you know, that kind of fills the need for me. So
That
it's
makes sense. That
yeah,
definitely makes sense with this game.
yep. It's a very punishing game where you play kind of a space pirate in a alternate history where the world wars never really stopped and then they extended into space after Earth got destroyed. So yeah,
The
it's kind of
with this, I don't think there's much lore with the game. Just that's pretty much it, I
yeah,
think,
pretty
lore.
much just what I said is the lore. I mean, there's a little bit more to it. You can kind of find little pieces here and there, but it's very kind of loose right now. But it is an early access game, so that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, but yeah, it's sort of a diesel punk, I guess is the genre. It's semi-futuristic, but everything's kind of dirty, grimy. Your ships look like even the better ships instead of just like your starter spaceship is sort of falling apart. And yeah, it has a really cool look to it, and I really enjoy all the World War II and um, uh, sort of weapons and armor. It just it has a cool look to it. But it's
Yeah,
very punishing. You can lose your stuff. It's sort of a looter shooter PvPvE. A lot of people will compare it to Escape from Tarkov, which I've only played a little bit of.
yeah, I've never played Tarkov. But I don't know. I enjoy it. I like playing space pirates. So,
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
no complaints there.
yeah. It has some neat mechanics to it. It has like a crafting system where you can make different weapons and armor. You kind of start out with very little. You kind of start out with like your a few basic weapons and not being able to really craft anything. And the game has a sort of progression system, sort of like a quest system that you kind of go through, and it'll introduce you to different, more advanced aspects of the game. Um, but it doesn't really hold your hand either. It's sort of just like go do this, and it doesn't tell you how to do that. That's just up to you.
Yeah, I would say that like in the game too is that you don't there's no player identification IDs. Um, a lot of times, if you shoot an NPC, you don't know if it's NPC or player without just looking at what they have on them. There's friendly fire too, so there's no way of really. It doesn't hold your hand at all. It gives you a couple of objectives, and it within to do within the mission, right? But it doesn't really tell you much besides that. You kind of just figure it out on your own. One of the things is that they're with we were talking about it recently is that there's these like secret compartments throughout the place, and to for loot for sometimes there's really good loot into them, but you just don't know where they are until you know what I mean. There's no maps, by the way, so you're just kind of learning by looking and around at your area, um, looking around in like the scene and seeing where different things are by labels or just kind of getting used to how the layout of the map is.
Yeah, I'd say there's a very steep learning curve. And like I've already mentioned, it's very punishing. So basically, the real high level look at the gameplay is you kind of get your you go in with gear or without and try to just do your best. And the game will like supply you with a pistol on like the starter ship, and you fly in and then you pick one of two different raids, they call them, to go into. It's usually like a spaceport or a naval outpost kind of deal. And then you go in and loot as much as you can and try to survive. um, and the whole like loot system is the kind of core thing of the game, is get as much of the best things you can and then get out alive. Um, yeah, and so you can go in with nothing, with a pistol, and come out with like the best gear in the game, or you could go in with the best gear in the game and lose it all. So there's also like a health and stamina regen system. You go in with uh, there's like food and first aid and that kind of thing that can bring your health back up. But more than that, there's actually a debuff. Every time you take damage, you'll have like pain, where your maximum health has a cap on it. So instead of going all the way to 100, you can only have like 90% health. And you have to use a specific, it's some sort of pain reliever, whether it's aspirin or morphine, or I think even the methamphetamines in the game remove that pain debuff, and it'll let you heal back up to full. And the same thing for stamina. The only thing that gets rid of that stamina debuff is water. But you lose stamina, and the debuff increases the more you run or even aim down sight, jump, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's a like there's certain things because you'll see basically it'll be white on your screen,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll show like, hey, you can't max that out anymore because like if you run too much, then it'll increase that debuff the more you run out of breath, especially. So something I've kind of just noticed. Plus, it happens over time, even if you don't do running. What I've noticed, it just does it at an accelerated rate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So the other thing is that you have to consider too when you go into these raids is your backpack space, and there are different sizes of backpacks. Some that you can craft yourself, and some you have to find. The best ones are ones you have to find. It's like your duffel bag as opposed to like a just a sack. And so depending on the size of your inventory, that kind of dictates how much stuff you can take out with you. And that also it presents a challenge because you have to make decisions like, do I want these crafting materials or do I want this extra gun in my bag, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's an annoying feature to me, but I think there's also positives to it in the way of like it requires you to kind of it's punishing on purpose, I feel. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the one thing about it is that when you're kind of going in and getting stuff, it's like sometimes you don't find a new bag and you just go in with a sack bag, or you can craft a bigger bag, but the biggest bags I think you have to find. But like
Yeah.
you basically can go with a little bit bigger bag. Luckily, if you find something bigger, find it on a dead NPC or player, and it really allows you to carry more. But the way you do it is you basically drag and drop, and each thing has its own particular size, and you have to just find a way to make it fit. One of the things I feel is like if your bag is getting full and you're trying to like decide what to take and not to take, I've noticed that is you're probably, unless you're really near the end and you're like everyone's gone, you're probably gonna get shot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a huge thing I noticed, like right off the bat in this game is you have to be careful with how greedy you are, because something about this kind of game is like I just want to take everything I can possibly get my paws on, and you can't, but you constantly want to try to fit more.
Mm-hmm.
And unless, like you said, you enter a situation where there isn't a lot of players on there and you only have to really deal with NPCs,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's when you can end up dead because you're fussing around with your inventory instead of paying attention or just leaving. So you kind of have to train yourself to realize like, oh, maybe I shouldn't worry about fitting, one more box of ammo, and I should just get the heck out of here.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I noticed that like when you're playing, I have had an issue where it's just like you keep on going in, and your inventory just fills up on
Yep.
back in the when you leave the game, and you keep on dropping
Right.
all that stuff that you pick up, all the crafting stuff and weapons, and it just you get like crates and stuff like that, and you just keep on putting stuff in there, and it just fills up way quicker, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have so many guns, and you just like hold on to them forever for no apparent reason.
Yeah, I have that problem. So like right now I have 3 or 4 boxes just full of guns, and like I have 2 or 3 guns that I like specifically, But these boxes even have guns that I probably won't use, but like I'm kind of a loot gremlin, I guess, and I just want to hold on to it. But
Yeah, being a little hoarder
um,
there.
yep, I'm a hoarder. But yeah, that's another aspect is not only in game, like in an actual raid, do you have to manage your inventory. Back home, like on your home screen where you decide what to keep and sell and break down for crafting components, you have to manage that as well. And I swear that's like a third of the game is just managing that inventory back on the home screen. It's like
Yeah.
playing Tetris or Jenga or something with shapes fitting into other shapes. I don't.
I don't know. It reminds me of the Rush Hour game board game
Yeah,
I showed
yeah,
you. Yeah,
you told me about that. Yeah,
yeah. It's just really frustrating at times.
like a little kid's like logic shape game. You have to fit a car through like a maze kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Um, Something else we didn't really touch on is the fact that you can only be in the raid for a certain amount of time. So when you like zone in your ship, you start the game with only like 25 minutes of oxygen. So you're only timed into this instance or whatever for a certain amount of time, and then you run out of oxygen and you will die. So you have to get out of there, before the time limit reaches. Otherwise, you're dead and you lose all your stuff anyway.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. You can. Yeah. There. You're gonna die, and
Hmm.
I've cut it pretty close sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's fun and a little exciting. I notice a lot of people when you're playing with other when you generally it seems like people leave around the 10-minute mark. People only stay there for about
That's
15 minutes, and generally, obviously, you get
yeah.
some stragglers, but like
Hmm.
general at the 10-minute mark, there's like you have 10 minutes of oxygen left. People are kind of like already on their way out.
Hmm. Yeah, by that time, typically you've probably filled up your bag anyway.
Yeah,
The times I've stayed the absolute longest are when I have the biggest bags to fill. Um, like that's kind of a danger in and of itself. Is like we already touched on. Is I want to fill up. I want to take everything I possibly can. So, but yeah,
yeah,
you will run out of time eventually if you're not careful.
yeah, and then you could start getting depending on which area, and you could start having issues with like NPCs.
Yep. Yeah, because more NPCs spawn, I think, especially when there aren't more Marauders to keep their population down. Um, yeah, so that's also an issue
Yeah,
because I've died to NPCs without even Marauders being around, just from the sheer number of having to kill them.
So yeah, so when it comes to the weapons and armor, uh, so they also degrade over time with use. So if you're
Hmm.
getting like shot, like in the chest or the head, it'll actually wear that armor right out, even if you continue healing up, right, until it basically
Hmm.
breaks. Weapons also, if you're using them a ton, they will break. Um,
Hmm.
so that is also a problem when you're playing. So sometimes I've left with the guns almost completely broken. I think some even have broken. So it is kind of an
Yeah.
interesting thing. There's also on your ship, you you start out. Everyone has like a thing called the rust bucket and stuff like that, right? And you can get a crew of like 4 people on that thing.
Hmm.
And basically on there, you also have like an engine, which if you get shot, you got to repair it. But the thing is that like your fire extinguishers, you have like I think 4 on them. I don't know if the bigger ones have more or not. I forget, but you get 4. I think it's 4 extinguishers, and they also like once they run out of juice, they're broken, and you won't be able to
Yep.
use them anymore. So
Yeah.
um, it's kind of interesting. I think that's when it comes to the space combat. I think it's really, it's good. I I, th- I think it's. I don't think it's too bad. I think it's kind of interesting because you can like, you can breach other players. So you can like go into a escape pod to breach other players,
Hmm.
and attack them on their own ships. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, you can have like a crew of up to 4, like you said, and that makes it a little bit easier and also more challenging. I mean, I don't know, I haven't been in a crew of any bigger than you and me, but even just you and me, it's hard to keep track of each other, and we have both killed each other at different times.
yeah, friendly
Um,
fire. Oh gosh.
yep.
You got him.
Their
He
movement.
has a stand. Sure.
Careful, I hear. Ah! You shot me.
Oh. Sorry.
Friendly fire is really easy to do in this game. The best thing to do that a lot of people recommend, and I think it kind of works, is to dress like each other. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, I guess in your brain it just solidifies the fact that that's the same person as me. The problem is anybody could technically look like that, so you're never 100% sure. But yeah.
I think the that yeah, because there's there's nothing above you that says oh, what do you call it? Nothing above you that's like, oh hey, like I'm friendly. So there's no identifications in this game at all. You could kill your friend and don't even realize it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And technically there is no difference between your friend and your enemy. Like literally none. The only difference is that you started out in a crew, so you load into the game on the same ship at the same time. Otherwise, there's literally no difference. You killed me one time accidentally, I hope, and that counted for your quest to kill other players. Because there's no difference. Like it's exactly the same. And I have heard of people joining random crews that were open and killing everyone else and stealing their stuff. So,
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh
Yep,
my
I read a Reddit post about it, so it does happen. But yeah. And technically that's just part of the game. I mean, that's a little bit rough. That's a bit silly in my head because, you will get called out and people will probably recognize your name and your antics. But
yeah, you don't get to make a name. It uses your Steam name.
Yeah, yeah. Which technically you could change, but
Yeah,
that's still, yeah. So. And like you said, I think the space combat is pretty solid. It could use probably some tweaks on different things. The biggest issue that just comes out in my mind right off the bat when we talk about space combat is the color of the reticule, because there will be backgrounds like that are light colored and you just can't see the reticule. You have to guess at what you're shooting at, basically.
yeah. The reticule is like gray.
Yeah, and it blends into so many things that so if I could make that like green or even red, it might be better.
Yeah, I think that'd be a decent to be able to change that. I think one of the things too is with the game. Yeah, there's also no reticules. That's the only reticules in the game. Your guns have no reticule.
Nope, there are no. Yeah,
I think the thing about it is that like I like and dislike is the color grading in the game, in the way that like it can make it hard to see things.
Yeah,
but
it is dark too, so
dark,
like almost
yeah.
everywhere is dark, so you have to really pay attention to movement and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's cool in the way that like when it's positive for you, it's fun because you can hide your ship in a dark place and it's harder for someone to see you. Or people can, or in the game when you're playing, it's you can kind of be hidden a little bit more with the shadows. But like when you're trying to when you're dealing with that, it's really annoying.
Yeah.
I think the other part is the sound in the game. I think it's great with talking about that with the because of the sound, you have to listen to where people are or where shots are coming from. It really helps quickly to identify, hey, there's another spacecraft in that direction. Right. That's where the shots are coming from. So I think that's kind of a cool way that they've made the sounds in. Well, every game kind of does it, but the way that they've done the sounds is like, I think they've done a great job. Like when you open the vault, it just is like, it's so freaking loud. It's like, it's letting everyone know you're there, but the sound effects are really good, I think, on that.
Yeah. I would tend to agree. There is some criticism, and I would also agree with some of the criticism. Like a lot of it's almost a stealth game in a way. Like the more sound you make and the way you make it, like depending on whether you're running, walking, or kind of crouch, people can know where you are a lot easier. And that's both in space and in when you're in the actual raid. It's sort of the same thing, because when you're shooting out in space, like people will hear it, which doesn't technically make sense, but you have to have some sort of sound because otherwise it's going to be kind of silly. It's just That's just my opinion on it. Like in reality, yeah, space combat's going to be quiet, but um,
The other
but
thing
yeah,
is that I would say
go
that
ahead.
you're the other thing is you have like you open like stuff like
Hmm.
lockers. They're allowed and everyone can hear you open them.
Hmm. Even reloading, I've
Yeah.
heard people reload like in the next room over, or eat something or use a first aid kit. It all makes some sort of sound, and if you're listening closely enough, you can tell like what somebody's doing just one room over. Um, one of the criticisms on that I started to bring up was a lot of people have problems with the vertical sound because if there's multiple floors in an area, you don't know if someone's above you or below you or on the same floor as you. Um, I'm not gonna say I've never had an issue with it. I haven't had as much of an issue as people complain about it, but I do think that that's probably something that needs to be worked on. But again, it is an early access game. You know, they can always use that as a little bit of a an excuse when it comes to that kind of stuff. But
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I have issues with the vertical sound
mm,
effects because I'm like, is the person above me, below me, around? It can get kind of
mhm.
confusing to me. I think there could probably be some improvement on that.
We've already talked about it a little bit, but the general just gameplay, the thing you would do from point A to point B is, um, you know, you would kind of to start the game, you pick the stuff you want to bring into the raid, whether it's your weapons or your armors, various consumables, and your ammunition, um, and you also have to pick your ship. 9 times out of 10, probably 99 times out of 100, it's going to be the rust bucket because most people don't want to risk their fancy ships, and I don't blame them. So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think I've for me, I got two ships, fancy ships, and it's only because I stole them from other people. I've
yeah,
never made one, and yeah, I could
yeah,
see why people, I don't take them in because I don't want to lose them. Kind
yeah,
of hoarding
yep,
onto them, I guess, for no reason. But
yeah. The only really reason to hoard them is they give you a little bit extra inventory space that you can use, and you can have up to 3 ships. Uh, so that's three ships with whatever it is, 4 by 8 inventory slots, or the bigger ships have a bigger inventory, I think. But yeah, that's the only real reason. I mean, other than just like I said, being a loot gremlin, a loot goblin, and not wanting to anyone else to have your ship, and you can just leave it in your hangar and be happy that it's there.
yeah, I think that I you can add attachments to the ships though. Um,
Yeah. Apparently, there's even attachments, or maybe that's something they haven't added yet. I don't know, but I see that there's a slot to add an attachment to like the engine. I don't know if that's to make it faster or whatever. And there are also turrets that you can add that will do various things. There's torpedo launchers and rocket launchers and cannons and flat cannons, and there's even a nuclear like warhead launcher, which we haven't gotten to the point where we can make one of those, but um, I've seen them used. I watched a video. It was pretty neat.
yeah, I think I kind of hope with talking about space combat that they could also space combat's fun. I just wish there was some kind of I don't know what it is. I feel like it's missing something or some kind of improvement on
There
what already is.
there isn't really a incentive to do space combat for the most part.
Hmm.
The only real thing to do is if you disable an enemy ship when you're going into a raid, you've slowed them up. The other thing that you can do if you're a real jerk, and I've done it a couple of times, I think you have as well, is you disable their ship and then you just keep pummeling it even though it's disabled because it keeps doing damage to them. So then you're forcing them to either die aboard the ship or abandon their ship.
Hmm.
Um, Either way, like you kind of help yourself out by doing that, whether it's just disabling it or then pummeling it afterwards, because it slows them down and gives you more time in the raid to do your thing before they get in. Um, but yeah, like you said, there isn't a big reason to do that. I mean, like it doesn't really gain you anything except for usually slowing them down, because trying to kill them in space is a little bit harder, because if they make it to the escape pod, they can usually get away because it's very hard to hit an escape pod. Not impossible, but it is difficult. Um, but yeah, you pick your ship, you go in, and then like you either fight other ships or go straight to a raid. And anytime you spawn in, there's going to be one of I think 4 different raid types. It's like a space station, terraformer, naval outpost, asteroid mine. You pick one of those and you go in to find your loot.
Yeah, I think yeah, I think whatever they're gonna do with it in the future, um, I'm interested to see. But
Mhm.
like you said, it doesn't give too much incentives at this time.
No.
Um, but like we said before, everyone gets a rust bucket. So like there's almost, when you go into a raid, there's almost not a point to go back to the rust bucket if an escape pod's closer,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
it doesn't matter. You can lose it. It doesn't. You get a new one immediately.
Yeah. So on each of the raids, there is some of them are a little bit easier to get to than the others, I think. But there are basically a pod bay where you can go in, jump in an escape pod, and then fly to the exit. And the only time I had one time that was a bad idea. What happened was, as I got out in the escape pod, and there just happened to be an NPC turret, because there are NPC turrets out in the space map area, that was below the space station that I was in. It started shooting at me right away,
Mhm.
and I wasn't able to escape, and it blew me up. Well, I had a whole thing of loot, and so yeah. Typically, though, players aren't going to do that, because, I mean, unless they just want to screw people over, that doesn't do anything for them, because they can't then in turn get your loot because it's vaporized in space at that point.
Yeah, I think the um when talking about space combat, what have seen, I didn't mention earlier, is that you'll notice that people will shoot in your direction,
Mhm.
just to kind of like do something while you're flying. I feel
Oh yeah,
plenty
yeah,
of people
yeah.
are
I
messing
think
around.
that's
It's just to kind of like, a lot of people maybe to disable you, but it's just something to do while you're waiting to get to the dock.
Yep, I've noticed that as well. Like, a lot of people will just take pot shots at you for no real reason. Like, they are hoping to inconvenience you, but I mean, they're not outright trying to disable your ship. They're just like, oh, I might as well shoot at this guy while I'm flying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
noticed that too.
But yeah, after the space bit, you go into one of these space stations, into the raid they call it, and you basically start hunting for loot. It can be in anything from cardboard boxes and crates to ammunition boxes to there are weapon crates, or like a foot locker, basically, that usually has a weapon or armor in it. There are lockers, and then the big things are like you mentioned, the it's basically like a little uh, floor panel that you can lift up, and there's good loot in there typically. A couple of times I've opened it up and there's been like silly stuff in there, like a metal sheet and cables, but usually you'll find something good, like a good weapon or a big backpack, that kind of thing. And then there are also, on top of all of that, a vault that is closed with like 3 little metal hatches, or little metal sealer, what would you call that? Some sort of clip, basically, that you
Mm-hmm.
have to melt off with a blowtorch. And you can get to a point where you can craft blowtorches, but you can also just find them through maps, and then use those blowtorches to open up the vault so that you can get in there. And usually in the vault, you'll find things for money, that you can sell for money, that you can then in turn use to repair your weapons and armor, or buy other weapons and armor, basically. You also can find a lot of ammo and weapons in the vaults as well. But
Yeah, I think and then there's also tokens to open certain doors
oh, yep.
too. Those are All these things, by the way, are just so freaking loud. You just like open them up,
Oh
and we're
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, we're like, you can't even hear. The thing about it is that you can't even hear if someone else is just like heard it and coming towards you immediately, because all you hear is the right. So
Yeah.
it's just like you're just freaking like,
Yeah.
you're like,
The
well, I hope no
doors are
one's.
loud. There's sirens sometimes when you open a
Yeah,
door. Yep.
yeah. You're just like, oh, no one heard that.
Yep.
So,
There's even like some metal gates that you open with lockpicks,
mhm.
and even big boxes that you open with lockpicks that make a lot of noise to open. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes they have things in them that are good. So, but I would say that loot is pretty, you know, it makes it kind of fun in a way in the game, finding the loot,
Oh,
because
for sure.
you're like sometimes it's, you can get these opportunities to get good stuff, but sometimes you get not good stuff. It's I don't
Mhm.
know, like gambling in a way, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I sort of when we were talking about it before, I compared it to loot boxes in video games, which
Mm.
is divides people in all kinds of ways. But the fun of loot boxes, fun quote unquote, is the fact that like, hey, maybe I will get this really awesome thing, and you open it up and you get a really awesome thing, or you'll get crap. Um, but that's kind of part of the fun, and you get to have that fun without spending, 5.99 for 5 loot boxes. So, but you crack these, boxes open, and it's like, oh, I found uh, an MP40 or an STG 44, which are, you know, some pretty good guns in the game, and you you get those, and sometimes you might get something crappy, like it might be a pistol or a Sten, which is a smaller machine gun. That's not, it's okay, but they're everywhere, so it's not that big a deal to find those.
Yeah, I think though, if you like, there's guns that I just don't think are good though, like the MG42.
Yeah, the MG42 can be good, but like you also can't aim down sight with it because it's a large machine gun. So you can't really be super accurate with it. Um, I looked up a couple of videos of people doing good with an MG42, but typically like that's just not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something more accurate that I can control. But yeah.
I think part of the reason is that like it's a powerful gun and they don't want to make it like haste.
Oh
Just
yeah,
like
that
a
for
you
sure.
have it, you just like wipe people out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And with the size, in reality, MG42 in real life, um, there isn't many people that would be able to, if any, really, be able to shoulder fire that effectively.
right. Um.
But
Yeah, I think like I like the game overall. I think
mhm.
it's in early access, like we said, right? So I like the game overall. I think what would you say you feel is like, what do you like most about the game? Well, like what makes the most interest to you for the game?
um, I I just like that it's um, well, I like two things really. I like the loot aspect that we've already kind of dived into and talked about, how it's, exciting, and like, I can get this stuff, and maybe I can get my way out of here. And if you get your way out of here, it has these super high highs, right? And then it has super low lows where you find all the best stuff and you're tricked out and you whatever, and somebody gets a lucky shot on you and you lose it all to some jerk with a Luger,
Mm-hmm.
which is a starter pistol in the game. So in general, I guess I would say I like it because of how punishing it is, and I guess I'm just a sadomasochist. So
I I like for me I like the be able to try to get better weapons and find better things. I
mhm.
like the shoot loot aspect of it to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I think I don't think like these type of games are like my bread and butter or anything like that. Like
Mhm.
I have fun doing them there, but they're not like my top choices of games. I think I have, even though it's not my top choice of a game, I think it's a pretty fun game to still play because
Mhm.
there's objectives they give you right with the contracts
Mhm.
thing. Um, and you helps you unlock more things. I know we didn't really touch on that, but it contracts you do different has you different things, and you can just basically unlock more options. So I do like that aspect of it. So it's kind of like, yeah, I liked also the thrill of like getting stuff and kind of like you're running away and you're trying to get away and you're like, oh, gets a little heart bumping a little bit. You're like,
Yeah, get your blood going. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say they're my bread and butter either. This one I dove deep into probably for a lot of different reasons. Like I've already said, I like the looting aspect of it and just trying to find the best stuff and whatever. Also the alternate history setting. I get to use like some of my favorite type of guns that I find are really neat in a sort of sci-fi universe, which is kind of pretty cool. So yeah, between all of that, I do really like the game. The thing you mentioned about the contracts is sort of like your main quest line. I do really like that as well. It sort of gives you something to work through and towards. Some of them are a little bit extreme. Um, and I don't just mean like, this will take me a while to complete. It's like, oh, this will take me many, many, many hours just to do this one objective because it's, something very specific. Like I'm stuck on one right now. It's kill 25 of these specific NPCs with this specific weapon, and it's like that's never gonna happen. Like that's gonna take me so long. So it's those kind of things are a little bit annoying. I can see why they do that, but that doesn't make it any less annoying.
yeah, I would say so. I think that's something that's kind of annoying. Um, I think the other thing is the inventory system. I think there could be some improvements with the inventory system in the sense that I don't like that you have to put when you craft something or you get something from contracts, it has to immediately go to like the overall inventory system instead of going into
Right.
like a crate that you have an open
Right.
space for. So you always are limited on the amount of crates you can have and how much boxes you can have inside your inventory because you can't import anything like that without it being able to fit into the main inventory section first.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, basically you have a main inventory, and then in that main inventory, you can expand it by putting in crates that hold more stuff. But when you craft something, it won't let you basically say like with the shop, you can drag it into a box. But the crafting, when you collect it, it has to go in your main inventory. So you have to leave a section of your inventory open, like not filled with crates to expand it, which is a bit silly. It sort of undermines their own thing in a way, in my opinion. But that's probably just something that they haven't fixed because it's not a big deal. It's not game breaking, but it's just a bit goofy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would say so.
there are a few problems I have with the inventory. The main thing, to be honest, it might sound lazy, but just give me like an auto sort button that will put together stacks. Like if I have 3 stacks of 9mm ammo, and this one has 20, and this one has 12, and this one has 33, just let me push a button that puts them all together in one, instead of me having to drag them one by one to each other. I will say that I think if I drag like a half empty stack into a box that has another half empty stack, I think it will put those together automatically, but that's not really it's, that's just one little thing that kind of works the way it should, when it would be nice to just be like, okay, and put these together instead of me having to spend 10 minutes sorting through my ammo every now and then.
Yeah, that part. I think another thing that I kind of find annoying is that I don't understand if armor is really that helpful sometimes because
Yeah.
you feel like sometimes you get shot. Like I think I remember you were talking about the time you got shot right in the head and you had like a style helmet or something.
Yeah, I had like the best helmet in the game, and someone shot me. It was actually an NPC. If we're talking about the same time, it was an NPC from like 30 yards away one shot me with a sawed-off shotgun, and I was just like, so my helmet just doesn't work. And I understand it doesn't protect your face, right? But like he shot me from the side because like he was on my left side, and so I don't know. Like, do the helmets, does the armor actually help? I'm sure it does, but we don't. It doesn't really even give us any numbers on like. It'll be like this is a 9 armor and this is a 5 armor, and it's like, well, the 9's better, but by how much is it actually better, right?
Yeah.
Like how much does it decrease damage? Because
Mm-hmm.
to my knowledge anyway, maybe there's some resource out there that tells you. It doesn't actually tell you like the damage reduction that you get from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do find that annoying.
So yeah, that would be something that's just a little thing, but like it would be nice to know what the armor actually does, at least like damage reduction wise. But
Um,
um,
yeah, I think that there. I wish there was a little bit more improvement with that. And I don't understand sometimes how you die. Sometimes it's confusing with that, but
yeah, it's usually an NPC. Like other players, there has been a couple other times I've been killed by players, and I'm like, really, how though? But it does happen. I think that's but with the NPC part of it, I think that is something they might have to tweak a little bit, because just I've read, again, because I've spent a fair amount of time with this game already. I've also dove into different Reddit posts and stuff, and there are a lot of people that have had the same issue of like an NPC from 30 yards away one shot me with a sawed-off shotgun, and it's just like there isn't a player that could really do that. Like once in a while through sheer luck, sure, it could happen, but
yeah, they could just like turn around and just shoot you right in the back of right in the head. Like
yep.
I've seen them do 180s just so quickly and snap.
Yep.
Like you're like, I feel like you're cheating, NPC.
Yeah. So I think the AI might need to be tweaked a little bit in places. Yeah, that would probably be one of my concerns or things that I would say need to be improved. The game does crash now and then. I've played this game.
No, it doesn't crash as much as Call of Duty when we've played it.
You're absolutely right there. I've played this game for probably about half as much as I've played Call of Duty, the newest Call of Duty, and I've probably had it crash half as much as the newest Call of Duty. So,
yeah, when Call of Duty first, I think the first couple weeks, first month, it seemed like Call of Duty was like crashing all the time. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's probably like every hour or two of gameplay it would crash. Whereas, this game I've maybe 3 times throughout like almost 100 hours of gameplay, 90 hours of gameplay. So,
yeah, I think the game is pretty good overall. I think I've enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to trying it, especially after it comes out of early access. I think, and when you look on Steam, the Steam reviews are mostly positive, is what it says, and they even have like a Discord and things where you see people like they'll be streaming on there and stuff like that. It seems pretty lively chat.
Yeah.
But I think I haven't looked at Reddit, but how would you say most people perceive it on Reddit? Like pretty.
I've seen 1 or 2 people, post negative stuff in the game. The most negative thing that I've come across is, it seems like it's like sort of a 50-50 split on people being like, oh yeah, there's a ton of cheaters, and then other people being like, I've never really seen any sort of cheating. The only specific time I've seen a video of someone that was obviously cheating was this guy who was just kind of running around. He was wearing mediocre armor or whatever. And this other guy, the guy recording, shot him multiple times, and he just stood there to the point where he should have died 4 or 5 times over. And then he just runs off. And then he comes back, and then he drops like a bunch of gear in front of the guy, like guns, ammo, whatever, just tons of stuff. and then kind of runs off again. And then leaves the guy shooting him just kind of standing there looking down at the gear like, should I pick this up? Because this is obviously a hacker, a cheater of some sort. Like the guy just didn't die. Like, so there was something obviously going on there. So there's obviously some cheating in this game, just like there is in other places. I personally haven't really experienced any that I can specifically point to and be like, that was cheating. That person, there's no way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is probably one of the biggest criticisms I've seen is there's not any anti-cheat software and the developers aren't doing anything about it. And I don't know, it's quite early access. I think it went into early access in like October, I want to say.
2022.
But so only like 3 months ago or something, 4 months ago at the most.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's definitely some work to be done on it, but in my opinion, in the time I've spent in the game, I've seen very little of the negatives. A few crashes, no real cheating. Yeah, but other than that, like I say, it's a pretty dang good game. I've had a lot of fun with it. So
Yeah, I think it's great. I think if you want to get it while it's in early access, I think that's totally fine. I think it's a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, just keep in mind that it is early access and there are going to be issues, and it is a smaller team working on it. I think it's 3 guys made this. So, yeah, there are issues, but like the issues I've seen in comparison to like say a AAA game that has some of the same issues, Call of Duty, not that big of a deal. Like
I also think you think about the price of it. The price is pretty affordable compared. I think what you're getting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's $30, which is like less than. Again, we're comparing it to Call of Duty. It's a different game. Call of Duty does have a similar. What's the word I'm looking for? There is a gameplay mode in Call of Duty, the DMZ, that is similar to this type of game, and so yeah, I think there is some comparisons to be made there, but the issues that Call of Duty has, this big AAA game that costs twice as much, is kind of equivalent to the issues that this game has. That so you're getting kind of similar issues for half the price tag. So it's not an excuse, but it is like, I mean, if you're into this, it's kind of worth it if you're into this type of game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty great. I think it's good.
I agree.
Well, let's finish it off. Send everyone on home.
All right. How are we doing that?
Thanks for listening today, and like and subscribe and comment on what you think if you've already played Marauders and what you think about Marauders. Or if it's a game you're interested or not interested, let us know. Thank you.